Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacqueline. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and to our friends listening on Business Talk Radio. I am Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck and I am proud to present Talking Heads. Talking Heads is a series of shows that are expert presenters' opportunity to share their knowledge and their experience with our audience. Each expert presenter is a talking head and has 30 minutes for their show. Today's talking head is Cini. Let's welcome him. Hi, Al. So good to see you. We just did the business show together. So Al is the managing partner and the creative force behind BCAT, which is the Brand and Cultural Alignment Toolkit. He is also a television show host on RVN Television, and he is the trifecta here at USA Global TV. He's a co-host, talking head, and elevated listener. So Al,
say that again?
I can't hear you speak. I just want our audience to know before I go backstage that last week was your first episode and you told me there's no way you could fill the time slot and that I should wait around if I could. And I did. I was like, oh my gosh, he doesn't need me. He could go on for 2 hours. So you nailed it last week.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It turned out to be way more comfortable than I thought it was going to be. But then again, I've been talking about this for so long and doing it really for so long that it's just sort of flowed, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come back and dive a little deeper into it. So thank you.
Well, I'm excited. I've got my notepad and pen here. So
okay.
I'm going. Do you want me to put up your deck now?
Sure, we can do that. And,
okay.
I'll disappear into a smaller corner, but go ahead and do that.
All right. And I'll be backstage.
And I'm ready whenever you say. You good? Okay, here we go. First of all, I want to thank everybody who was here last week for my first go around with Talking Heads, which I did without slides. I'll talk about that in a minute. But last week was about the importance of role models in our lives. And what I want to do this week is explain a little bit about how with brand and culture alignment, we measure a role model for a group or a team or a whole company for that matter. Because what we've learned is that when you've got a really successful company, a company where everybody's fully committed to doing their best every day, when you've got that, then what everybody really sees in their mind's eye is a role model that represents the best of all of them. And that becomes unconsciously the person they try every day to be more and more like. And that attempt to be more and more like that person is what makes them their best and what makes the organization successful. So what we're going to do is explain the science behind it a little bit today, and I promise I won't be too dry about that. I'm going to start with a story, and from very early in my career, because I think this is where I really first, as an adult, became mindful of this experience. As a child, I think it's pretty common, but as an adult, I really became mindful of this experience, let's say at the age of 23 or 24. I was working at the time as a software engineer for a small computer company in Hartford, Connecticut, and I had my own personality. I was wired my own way. I did things my own way. I mean, which is typically true of most young people. I had my own way of doing things, and I'd achieved a certain level of success just being who I was. I could have been better, but I was having fun. So every day I would do what I did, and most things went well, but some things would go wrong, and I always felt a little bit out of place. I don't know why. I never really felt like I was a good fit for the organization. Anyway, one day, an older person, probably somebody in their 30s, it's funny thinking about that now, but somebody in their 30s came by working for the computer company whose equipment we were reselling. We were what you call an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer. We would take computer equipment from a large manufacturer and we would repackage it by including our own solution in the result. Anyway, this guy came by because he heard that we had some issues and he wanted to make sure that he addressed all those issues. And what struck me about, we'd have meetings all the time and we'd get together all the time. But what struck me about this meeting is the level of command that this individual assumed when they entered the room. And he was very poised, very measured, very open, friendly, sat down at the table, the conference room table, opened up his briefcase. He had one. None of us did. Opened up his briefcase, took out a yellow pad that he'd already written some notes on, took out a pen. I mean, I watched all this because the way he did it was very deliberate and very measured and practiced, and it was obvious. And he had a way of running a meeting that I'd never seen before. He followed an agenda, which he brought with him. He asked everybody in the room to identify what they considered to be the big issues that needed to be addressed, and we all did. He wrote down everything, often stopped to ask questions about certain things that we'd say, just to make sure that he clearly understood them. And when this was all over, he packed everything up, thanked us all for our time, didn't really offer any advice while he was there, but said he would get back to us. And 3 days later, this is before email. I mean, email existed, but not at the level we see it today. We got a letter, an actual posted letter that was written to us. In fact, each of us got a separate letter, copied to everybody, one copy each, that included everything he'd heard in our meeting. All the things he'd written down and noted were our concerns, which really impressed me. And then at the end of it, all the things he intended to do to address all those concerns, to resolve them. Now, up until this point, I was kind of a fly by the seat of your pants, write the code, get it done, celebrate the success kind of a guy who really never bothered to measure twice, cut once, think things through. That was never me. But I was so impressed by this gentleman that I began to wonder if maybe there wasn't a better version of me that I could work on a little bit to be a little bit more like what this guy taught me to be, without ever actually teaching me. That was the amazing thing. He was just by, which is another point. I think this is a really valid point. People don't tell you who they are. They show you who they are. You learn who somebody is. You learn what somebody is at their core by observing the way they behave. And that is what they say, what they're wearing, how they listen and interact with you. All those things that make somebody an observable person. All those things are how people tell you who they are. Now, last week we talked, and that was a role, for me, that was a role model. And I actually did begin to change. I'll tell you a little bit more about the result of this. It's actually pretty interesting. I learned from him how to be a better version of myself without him ever taking credit for it or saying, he never gave me a lecture. He just showed me a better way to go. And so what I want to do is tell you that since then, remembering that moment and hundreds of others, and I'm sure if you think a little bit about it, you can think of hundreds in your own life. Everything, all these other encounters that I've had with other people that I've respected and admired have shaped me in some way. So I'm going to tell you what we learned in the research we've done. And in order to do that, I want you to meet the 4 people I talked about last week. I'm going to show you their pictures. So here is person number 1. This is a person, let's say a watchmaker or a jeweler. This is a person who, when they go to IKEA and they buy furniture, they take it home, they put it together, they read the instructions first. They do that very carefully. And when it's over, the furniture is properly assembled and there are no pieces left over. A little different from the way I'm wired. I'm wired to get the furniture at IKEA, bring it home, hammer it together, do my best. God help anybody who tries to sit in it after I built it. I don't quite have that level of precision, but I want you to meet this first person because one of the 4 role models that we identified last week actually affects your brain chemistry when you see her. And she is what we call the precision role model. So this is role model person number 1. Somebody who measures twice, cuts once, is totally focused on the task at hand, is an expert at that task, works diligently to keep their level of expertise at a very high level, proud of what they know, proud of what they do and how they do it, and proud of the method and science that they apply to the work they do. So that's role model person number 1. Now, person number 2 is maybe a little bit more goal-focused and maybe a little bit more energetic. And maybe a little bit more action-oriented. Role model number 2 is somebody who knows where we should be going and gets us there. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the boss. In fact, often they're the person who, just by doing what they do, motivates everybody to do the things that need to be done. And there are emergent leaders in every organization, like that gentleman that I met when I worked for the computer company. They become leaders just by virtue of the fact that they're present in the room, and the things they do become the things that we know need to be done. And they're very focused on measurable results, bullet points on slides. These are the 3 things we're going to have done by Friday. It's another thing. They're very, very big on dates and making sure that when something is going to happen is just as importantly considered as what is going to happen on that day. So these are people that we call resolute. They focus on, they have a value system called resolve. We'll talk about that in a bit. We call these people drivers, and that's person number 2. Person number 3 is me. I guess this is a little bit of a confessional. You might remember I just described myself in that computer company as kind of freewheeling and maybe a little random. Yes, I was very out to impress people. I would write great code. I would show people. I would run it for people before it was even written. And often that was embarrassing. But I was out to make an impression on people. And making an impression on people means that sometimes you cut corners and maybe sometimes you move things forward before they're ready. But what you're out to do really more than anything is change the conversation and move things in a new direction. You're looking to enlist support and generate enthusiasm for that. That's person number 3. And that's innovation creator types. We'll talk about that. Person number 4 is the person who comes to work at the appointed time, doesn't leave until they're supposed to leave, knows, understands how to use, and has all the right tools, works well in coordination with others around them so that we don't step on each other's toes as we're working. Very careful to measure things and apply things according to the rules, very rules-based, very methodical, and very practiced. That's a person in harmony with both tradition and other people. We call these people caretakers. And okay, so now you've got a picture. Now you've met 4 people, the 4 role models that I talked about last week. I wanted to reintroduce you to those 4 people because, in fact, they can be represented on a map. We've developed a map with the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit that lays out these 4 personality styles in 4 quadrants. Quadrants are a common way of showing personality. You've seen other models that do that. In our case, we're talking about the collective signature personality of a group or a team or a company. And what we'll see in a little bit is that all companies are combinations of all 4, but kind of like right-handed and left-handed. Different companies use each in different amounts. Last week, we referred to it as, if you've ever heard the expression, boy, those people really drank the Kool-Aid. We might come back to this in a minute. Imagine that the water cooler of your company has 4 flavors of Kool-Aid in it. Those 4 flavors are specially brewed to communicate to the people who drink it your culture and your brand. Where brand, as we said last week, is behavior, what I see when I'm watching you, what I hear when I'm listening to you. Everything about you that I can perceive through my 5 senses is your brand. And your culture is what motivates you, the pride that you feel in behaving that way. And your culture is something that drives your brand. And in fact, when you're proud of the work you do, your brand reinforces your culture. So it's kind of a dynamic system. So these 4 corners, these 4 elements are the 4 elements we work with in brand and culture alignment. And brand for us is behavior, and you'll see that on the words at the bottom of each quadrant. So in the upper left, we have the watchmaker who is an expert. Her value system is precision, making sure that she's the best of the best and she knows what she's doing and she understands exactly the consequences of every step she follows. Going clockwise around this diagram. Drivers are people who get to the point, focus on results. Their value system is resolve, making a choice, making a decision, pushing a point, and in particular, pushing that point on a particular date, making a promise that something will be finished by a certain time or date. Keeping our way around the clock. We've got me in the lower. Last week we talked about Seinfeld. I'm kind of a Kramer type by nature. That's a creator. A creator is somebody who not necessarily creative in the sense that they paint pictures or write music, but creative in the sense that all of a sudden something spontaneously comes to them. They act on that spontaneity. They present that out to people, and their value system is innovation. You always are looking to move people in a new direction. You're always looking to inspire them to think differently about things. So that's me, kind of, and that's the kid with a hand up, the finger painter. And then finally, finishing our diagram in the lower left Caretakers are people that follow the rules, know what tools to use, know when to use them, follow a checklist often to make sure they don't miss any steps, know how to do every little thing that adds up to the big things that need to be done. And their value system is harmony, not just harmony with each other, but also harmony with tradition and following the rules. They believe, these are people that believe that rules were made to be followed. So knowing that, we can say certain things about these classes of people. At the top, when you're talking about experts and drivers, you're talking about people who focus on objective reality and practical evidence. Very practical minded, not so swayed by emotional arguments, mostly looking to be shown the evidence that justifies a particular course of action. So I've written the word objective to describe them as a class. And below that line, that horizontal line, you've got the caretakers and the creators, and they tend to act more on emotion, more on feeling. They tend to act more on that sense that they're either harmoniously acting in conjunction with what they believe is their tradition, so they feel comfortable doing what they're doing, and they hope and they try to communicate to everybody around them that the people around them feel comfortable as well, or in tune with the reactions of people when they do what they do. If you're an innovator or creator, then you're trying to impress people and get them to feel a certain way about things. You're trying to get them excited about something. So objective is at the top, subjective is at the bottom. And if we draw a vertical line and we split this diagram into two halves, left and right, on the left, you have people who tend to be relatively calm, tend to try to take things on an even keel or take an even strain toward everything, relatively unruffled and unflappable, sticking to the process, following the plan. And on the right side of the vertical line, you get people more like me who tend to get excited. They tend to be maybe impulsive, maybe a little rash. There are good and bad aspects of each of these four personality types. However we lay these out, there are things that we want to dial up and do more of, depending on the circumstance we're in. And there are things sometimes that we want to dial down and do less of. And that's kind of a point that I want to make. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. So when I say words to you like analytic or scientific, when you hear language like that, the picture that you get in your head is of an expert, somebody who knows a lot about something. On the other hand, when I say words to you like goal-oriented or to the point, the picture that comes into your head is somebody who's a driver. That is somebody who focuses on a result and moves people and moves events along to try to achieve that result. When I use words like methodical and empathetic, those words trigger in your brain a kind of an image of a person who is a 9-to-5, get it done according to the rules, follow the process kind of a person, a careful and methodical person. And when I use words like inspiring and surprising, you think of people like Kramer, people like me, people who take us in a new direction and maybe shock us a little bit or surprise us. Okay, now there has been research, in fact, that identifies specific patterns of behavior. Let's call them moods. It's important to remember, we're not talking about parts of the brain here. We're talking about a whole brain engaged in a particular kind of a mood collective function. And that is the functional aspects of all the brain working together. There have been research studies done that suggest that your brain actually lights up in a PET scan according to the words that you read on a list or according to the pictures that you see. And those four patterns of behavior that we've just talked about actually correspond to four moods that occur inside the brain that can actually be measured with PET scans. Now, the reason why this is important isn't so much because it's a way to describe people as they are. Our real value with the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit is that you could use it to describe people as they should be. Let me give you an example, and I'll use me as an example. When I met my friend, and think about it this way. There are four knobs inside your head, and those knobs are adjustable. If you count to 10, which is mom's advice, that was always mom's advice to all of us. Learn to count to 10, calm down and count to 10. Well, what is something you can do? What I'm teaching you or showing you is something you could do while you're counting to 10. If you find those four knobs in your head, when you dial up the blue and green knobs, you slow down, become more methodical, become more tuned in with events as they unfold. When you dial up the red and yellow knobs, you become more excitable, maybe more impulsive, maybe less restrained. Anyway, the point is, based on the role model you're following, based on the pattern of behavior that you observe, you can learn to adjust these knobs to become a better version of yourself. That's critical. So what I learned from my buddy at the computer company is that if I dialed up my blue a little bit and became a little bit more scientific and analytical about the data that I collected, and if I looked for patterns in that data, and if I dialed up the green a little bit and became a little bit more sensitive and in tune with the people around me, I could be a much more effective version of myself than if I just went with the normal circumstance for me, which is have yellow and red dialed up. So I learned to make adjustments in my professional life. And as a consequence of that, as a result of that, I've become more successful at that, I believe. And most people around you will probably tell you I don't do a very good job of that. Well, in fact, when I'm at work, I am a slightly different person because, like we say, people wear different hats during the day. Every set of circumstances of every team of which you're a member comes with a hat that has associated with it a specific setting for these four knobs. So when you're coaching Little League, or when you're writing a computer program, or when you're throwing a party, there are different adjustments for the four knobs in your head that are appropriate for the role you're playing. And everything about brand and culture alignment is identifying that appropriate adjustment of yellow and red that work for the company that you're a part of, or the organization that you're a part of, or the team that you're a member of. So if you take a look at this map here, you'll see what we have arranged here are 16 different companies that are mixes of, combinations of, some of two of the colors that we've just talked about. So let's take a look at the upper right-hand corner, and you'll see the logo for Lockheed Martin. What I had in mind when I wrote about Lockheed Martin was the defense contractor. Lockheed Martin is very much into resolve, very much about identifying a target, eliminating that target. That's the brand. The brand is literally execution, literally getting things done. And the culture is identifying, isolating, clarifying, approaching, disposing of. That is the brand and the culture of Lockheed Martin. Very, very red. Now, if you go all the way over to the opposite corner of this diagram, into the remote corner of green, you'll see Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP, which is part of Virtua, the virtual hospital system. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is very pure green, very much about taking care of families, taking care of children, taking your time, listening and understanding, empathizing, relating to. So where Lockheed Martin is about objectively identifying what needs to be done, Children's Hospital is about subjectively understanding and getting to know and empathizing with people who need help. So if that makes sense, we can move on from here. And you could see just by looking at it that by looking at this diagram that there are companies that are more combinations of more than one thing. If you look, for example, at Accenture in the upper right under Resolve is their water cooler is 2 scoops red. They're very much about getting things done, but they're also a community of professionals who work together to get things done. So they're 2 scoops red and 1 scoop green. You can see that. And I used to work, in fact, as a project manager for NBC, and I know them pretty well. They're an entertainment company. So they are 2 scoops yellow. If you drink the water from their water cooler, you'll see there are 2 scoops about entertaining and enlightening and engaging people. But they're also a very well-respected and trusted news organization. So they're 2 scoops yellow and 1 scoop blue. Now, all 16 of these logos are a combination of the 4 role models that we just talked about. And that combination of role models is what gives them their distinctive culture and their distinctive market-facing brand. And how do you find that? This is the fun part for me, and I hope we have enough time. I think we do. We have a few minutes. You take a team, a group of people. You ask them this question. This is what we call the incorporating question. You ask everybody on a team, and I mean everybody, short, tall, whether they started yesterday, whether they own the company, whether they mop the floors and answer the phones. Everybody is equally capable of answering this question. Every answer is equally valuable. Every answer is equally valid. So here's the question. Visualize our entire team as though we're a single person doing its best work on its best day to keep all its promises and achieve all its goals. That's the incorporating question. Spent a lot of time formulating that. We ask that question the same way over and over again. Our goal here is to ask a question that nobody knows the answer to, but it's so important that we're all willing together to work together to try to find the answer. Now, that means that everybody in the organization has been asked this question, and everybody gets to think about the answer to that question. What we've developed is a system that allows them to go online, answer about 15 minutes worth of questions on a survey instrument. Really simple. They can take that on any mobile device. And when that's finished, what we get back, for example, for Eric, one of our team members, is a data point that tells us what are the 4 flavors in Eric's water cooler and how much of each does he drink. Now, in this particular case, we've learned that Eric is mostly green, let's say 2 scoops green and 1 scoop yellow. So Eric is green yellow. That's his nature. Now, that's interesting. And we've learned about Eric as he answered that question, who are we when we're doing our best work on our best day? But it gets really interesting when we get everybody's answers and plot them together. What we found in brand and culture alignment is that when you get a lot of answers that are not alike, that are kind of scattered all over the place, that indicates that the people in this organization, the people on this team, are not, in fact, we validated this by doing pre and post tests, are not as engaged in their work as they could be. What we're answering here is the question, is everybody on my team rowing in the same direction? And the answer, when we get a lot of different answers back from the members of a team, the answer is that probably no, they're probably not answering. Further apart those answers are, the more the meter that we create, we call this an index of alignment, the more to the left we find that indicator sits. Now, brand and culture alignment going forward is about the steps you follow to bring everybody together. Now, the result of bringing everybody together, the result of increasing that index of alignment is that we've found that when you increase the index of alignment by pulling people together with their answers, those increases, that increase in alignment actually increases the engagement of the people in the work they do. And as a result of that, an organization like your organization gets better results and better traction in the marketplace. So everything about brand and culture alignment is about moving this needle. And we have a method that we follow. You've just seen, it's a 3-step method. You've just seen step 1. In the next talking heads, I'll describe step 2. It's not enough. I mean, it certainly is important that everybody in the organization is rowing in the same direction. But the next step in our process is everybody rowing in the right direction? It's not enough that everybody's just rowing together. It's important that they're all rowing in a direction that serves the purpose of our organization. And what we'll review next week are steps that you could take with the leadership team of your own company or within your own team of people that you might be a member of or might run. Steps that you can take to identify, quantify, actually measure, and pull together that overall answer to the question, who are we when we're doing our best work on our best day? The closer we all are to that, the further to the right our needle appears, and the further to the right our needle appears, the more goal-focused and methodical and organized we all are. And that completes today's Talking Heads. And I think, right on time. How'd I do?
Excellent. Well done. I forgot that you've control of the board, so you didn't even need me here.
Well, you know, but it's always good having you here and knowing that you're there. And did any of what I said make sense, Dr.
Yes, I took some notes, and the one thing I really loved was how what you shared with us last week about the 4 Seinfeld characters, and you actually put it into a visual of a person, you know, someone who is repairing watches, and they've got that level of detail and precision. I could really relate to those images and the way you described them. And I found myself thinking, you know, which one were you? And then you said which one you were. And I thought that was actually a surprise to me.
Huh, really? Well, that's because you probably have only seen the part of me that follows the role model that I met. And, you know, I may look more methodical, you know, and in fact, I have become, there is a kind of a bear down and get it done mood that I can get myself into now. That is not a natural state for me at all, but it's a very effective state for me. So sometimes maybe I overcompensate a little by saying it's going to be done by Friday, or when exactly do we need this? And, you know, maybe sometimes I put people off a little bit by trying to nail them down on when. But I found that overall, while that ruffles feathers, dialing up the red for me, you know, and dialing up the blue by breaking it all down. exactly what is going to be ready by Friday. What's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? That kind of thing. That's just sort of made me more effective. And I began to learn that with that random guy who walked into where I used to work. It's a funny story too, because I was sitting next to somebody who was also impressed by this guy. The two of us were sitting together, and both of us left the company within a year. We both left the company we were working for within a year. I went to work for a company that is blue-green, an engineering computer company. I left and went to work for a different computer company that was definitely blue-green. Engineering, that was their orientation, but very green, very, very community-oriented. That I went there. The lady sitting next to me, she started wearing business suits, dressed more formally. I mean, really, her wardrobe changed based on what I saw was the way this guy behaved. And I changed my behavior. What she saw was the way he presented. So she changed her look around that. And when it was all over, about a year later, she went to work for IBM, which is a very red organization.
Yes.
White shirt, starch, button down, very official, very formal kind of a company. So the same role model actually had two different effects on two different people who were in the same room at the same time. And that, to me, that's amazing, because that's the beauty of free will. You get to pick what it is about somebody that you admire and respect. And then later you come down the road and Dr. Jacqueline sees a few of these practiced behaviors that I've learned that are different from the normal put a lampshade on my head and jump around the room crazy kind of a thing that I often do. I mean, when you see me say spontaneous things and say goofy things sometimes and just make jokes sort of out of thin air, that's me and the way I'm wired. But I don't show that everywhere.
No, because I never in a million years would have put you with Kramer.
Yeah, well, if I'd stayed with Kramer, I wouldn't be where I am today. Those were bad ingrained habits, and I've learned to adjust them.
I would have put you, and by the way, I love the way that it's two scoops. I love that you had the organizations and that you don't have to be just one, and you can dial up a little more of this, a little more of that. But I would have thought you were Jerry.
And that's pretty much what I work on being more like. It's a lift for me sometimes, but I try to work on that. And I have to tell you, one of the reasons why the elevated listening program, your listening program, is so appealing to me is because it teaches you Jerry. I mean, if you think about those four characters, they all have a kind of an agenda, except Jerry. Jerry's agenda is really everybody else's agenda as seen through his eyes, which I find really kind of powerful. And it's when you learn to be a better listener, you learn to turn up the green and turn down the other knobs, dial down the other knobs, so that what other people are saying and what they really mean come through more clearly. Because often what they say and what they mean are two different things. But if you pay attention, you can tell the difference. And that's what you're always looking for.
Absolutely.
So,
and I'd love for you to tell me which colors am I, or what is my primary color?
I would say that your primary color, I would guess that the way you're wired, your primary color is yellow. I think you like to be the person in the room that everybody notices. I think that's you, right? Not because and that's not ego. It's just because you feel that dynamic works for you. And you feel that's where you make a contribution. When a room has the energy that you bring to it, you feel like you brought a gift. And I think that's the yellow component. But you are also red in that you are very focused on results. It's very important. You are very schedule oriented, probably more schedule oriented than most people I know. And I know from the times that I've been on with you, unlike the typical podcast, when you see that countdown and we're about to go live, you have made a promise that your program will be on at 3 p.m. And you mean it, Dr. Jacqueline.
Yes.
And it bothers you that something would come along and kick that off schedule. That would be a bad day for you. I could see that.
It's very true, because what happens is when one show runs behind, then they all run behind, and then I can't get to solid core, which is like where I need to take my stress
and
out.
You end up off center all day. I mean, it's somebody with a little bit more yellow would find that funny, and maybe you'd make jokes about it for the rest of the day. Like, here's our 3 o'clock show, and we're running it at 3:10 because ha 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 ha.
Right.
That's not funny to you.
No.
You don't find that funny at all.
Definitely.
And
not.
that is so Kramer would not be. No, That would not be you, if you know
So
what I mean.
I envision myself, now this is just me, my own
Uh,
mind, as red, green.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you see the green? I see the entertaining part, and maybe that's because where in your life do you see the green element?
Well, I feel like everything I'm doing is to help other people.
Yeah, and that it certainly is. Well, and I know a little bit about you from when you're not on camera, and you're always helping other people. I mean, you really are always actively involved in the lives of everybody around you, and the harmony, the balance in everybody in your life, I think, is very important to you. And you work really hard to help people maintain that, and it bothers you when they're bothered, and that would
Yes.
be green. So I could see that.
Yeah. So I guess I just don't have any blue.
No, I don't come with that, but I've learned over time. I learned how to build that up. I've actually gotten pretty good with I have to tell you that every now and then I do drop a stitch. I will. I'll cut corners. I'm not above that, but I'm very mindful of the fact that if I don't control that, I'll be cutting all the corners that can't afford to be cut. So if I've adapted blue, it's especially because of my experience, I think, as a software engineer, you just can't. There's some things you just can't overlook.
Now that you're mentioning it, when I think about, so every show, every single thing is outlined, and I go by this every single week. So I am very detail oriented in that regard.
If you were really naturally blue, that would all be in your head. The fact that you're writing it
Ah,
down means that you're working at it.
okay.
And which isn't, I mean, that's certainly not a criticism. You understand where I'm coming from on that.
Sure.
When you develop habits around one or another of the colors, so to be more mindful of them, it means maybe you're going a little bit against the grain, but it's because you have to.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I wouldn't want to fly in the back of an airplane that was piloted by Cosmo Kramer. What you want in a pilot is the right mix of blue and red. I mean, although they can tell a joke, especially on Southwest Airlines, after they've gotten
Yes.
that laugh, I want them focused on
I,
those knobs and buttons.
so,
Not funny to me anymore.
get back to your real job if you want to do stand-up
Yeah, your
comedy.
real job is to make sure you're doing this right.
Right.
So I think making those adjustments based on where you are and where you are in your life and in your work. The cool thing about a really aligned branding culture is you got now maybe 30,000 people whose adjustment settings are the same as they're going to work. Everybody who works for a really aligned, everybody who works for Amazon on their way, the distribution facility, the distribution part of Amazon, on their way to work, no matter who they were when they woke up, they're dialing up the red and dialing up the green because that's what Amazon is.
Mhm.
And then when they go home, they dial down the red if they're smart, you get along with the people at home, and you maybe leave the green alone and maybe dial up a little bit of blue if it's tax season. It's time to get on our taxes. So those
Yes.
adjustments, everybody comes with a set with factory settings. You're
Yeah.
kind of wired the way you are. You get whatever, how you reset your iPhone every now and then because it's lost its way. Reset the factory settings. Everybody comes with factory settings, but every time you put on a different hat to play a different role, each one of those hats comes with a different set of settings that are appropriate to that role. And the cool thing about a company like Amazon, when it's tightly aligned, is that hat and all those settings are the same for all 65,000 people. That's brand and culture alignment.
You've made it something that's this big. You've made it much more understandable. So thank you. And I know you're very busy at BCAT, but you have room for another client or two?
I do for another.
A client?
Oh yeah, I do. And I guess you'd like me to tell them how they can reach me to become one.
Yes, I would.
Thank you for that opportunity. I'm very easy to reach. We do this for people all the time, and we love doing it. I mean, it may not be obvious, but I have to tell you, when you get a room full of people together and you ask them the incorporating question, you work with them until they all have the answer, it can become very emotional and very rewarding, especially when people maybe who felt they haven't had a voice in a company for decades speak up and feel like now all of a sudden they're heard. And for me, that's the most rewarding part of the job. And I don't care whether you mop the floors and answer the phones at a company, or you're the person who runs the company who reports to those people. That's how I like to see it. if you're serving your purpose, then everybody's in line, working to be in line with that. And if you want to learn more about how we do what we do and maybe engage us to help you do it, you can reach me at al.cini, al.cini at getbcat, getbcat.com. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Al. And you can also find Al every week right before this Talking Head session on the Business Talk Show. Next week will be 85 episodes, and your Talking Head episode will be number 3. What can people expect? Again, I know you shared, but what will be next week's topic?
Next week is about taking what we learned from BCAT Step 1, which is who do we all think we are when we're doing our best work on our best day, to that mindful process of actually choosing, mindfully deciding what is the top of our mountain? Where is it we want everybody to, what is it we want everybody to follow? I mentioned last week, we've learned that people really don't follow people. People follow what people follow. That power of followership, that following a leader, even though that's not a person who pays you, even though that's not a person who can punish you or fire you. The leaders around us emerge whenever there's a purpose and they're aligned with it. And following that leader is what we're going to learn more about next week. How do we follow that thing that we're all really needing to follow in order to be aligned with our purpose? So that's BCAT Step 2, and that's next week.
All right, Mr. Cini, thank you so much. Another brilliant presentation. I look forward to chatting with you more later.
I'll look forward to that. Thank you, Dr. Jack. Great opportunity as always. And if you're considering being a talking head, stop considering and actually do it. Tell them how to do that.
I will take action. So we actually have the opportunity for a couple of people to come on board as a talking head. It's by invitation only. So you can reach out to me at my website, Jacqueline, usaglobaltv.com or Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com. I'll put it in the comments. But thanks so much, Al. I appreciate you.
Great opportunity, and people should pay attention to it. You want to take advantage of this.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I will see you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you so much, everyone. I know most people are watching our show on the replay, which is terrific. If you're over on our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV, just please click subscribe. Then you can watch all of our shows. We have about 20 live shows every week, and they are put into playlists to make it easy to find your favorites. All right, we have 2 shows coming up. They're both Talking Head shows, and I'm really excited to welcome Jean Keegan-Daly and Mariska Duprier. So as we leave, we're going to show you another clip in support of the people of Ukraine. Let's take a look. This is at Royal Albert Hall, and you'll figure out what it is in a moment. Thank you.
Here at the Royal Albert Hall. Now, before we start, all of us here at the RPO and the Royal Albert Hall felt it would be appropriate to pause and reflect on the terrible unfolding events in the Ukraine and to express our collective outrage. To express our collective outrage at the unlawful invasion of this sovereign state and the senseless loss of life. So, we invite you now to stand in solidarity with the Ukraine nation and its people as we play the Ukrainian national anthem.